fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Adam, right off the top, says, Torres, you're late like a lady. Stop doing your makeup and let's get started. No makeup for Torres. I am all natural. I'm just trying to keep up with everything going on in the world right now. We had an internet outage. I couldn't even log in to get ready to do the show. But we got ourselves a jam-packed show. No makeup for me, Adam, because I've been on Lane Kiffin watch. So today's show, a lot of ground to cover. We're going to open the latest with Lane Kiffin. I did a live reaction late last night to the news that his family was touring LSU and Florida. I actually have a little bit of an update. I talked to some people that I trust, and I think we're actually going to get a decision on Lane Kiffin here pretty soon. I'll give you everything I know and what I think happens next. From there, we will talk Virginia Tech, James Franklin. Big news there. I whiffed on that one because Sunday's show, I said I thought he was trying to kick the can down the road, but that gets taken care of. And then finally, actually a pretty big college hoops double header tonight. Kentucky, Michigan State, Duke, Kansas. We'll wrap the show with that. We got ourselves a big show. We got ourselves a busy show. We got ourselves a jam-packed show. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we do, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips and videos going up every single day. We are now, by the way, we have surpassed well over 65,000 subscribers. We're closer to 70,000 than 60,000, so that's pretty cool. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. You can also find us on Apple and Spotify. We do want to pump up those Apple numbers. I pinned it at the top of the chat. Go ahead and download on Apple. We appreciate your support there. Also, you know whose support we appreciate? Our friends and the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. Yeah, we're talking about SeatGeek. So SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. Love SeatGeek. It is the most user-friendly app of all the ticketing devices. Basically, it does everything for you. Every ticket is rated 1 through 10. Green dot, red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means maybe you want to stay away. But what I really love about SeatGeek, they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Okay, so how about this? If you go to SeatGeek.com or the SeatGeek app, if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, promo code Torres, you get $20 off your first purchase. So Paul in the chat used it to go to an A&M game a couple weeks ago, had a buddy going to the Backstreet Boys concert. I actually think the night before Thanksgiving, I'll be in Vegas. I might go to a Golden Knights game, a little hockey, Torres on pucks. Maybe I'll come back and recap the Golden Knights game after the whatever. The point I'm trying to make, when I go, I'm going to use SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. Before we get to today's show, by the way, Luke just mentioned it. Big plug for Cauli Puffs. They're addictive. Luke, we sent Luke some Cauli Puffs. So bottom line is, Luke is a member of the Aaron Torres community, a Torres super fan, and he is the member of the month. And so we set him up with some Cauli Puffs. We sent him a box, hopefully some gear. So if you want to become a member, $4.99 a month. It really, listen, it's the price of a beer at happy hour, okay? But it helps us do the show. It helps us keep the lights on. I did literally, by the way, get a brand new light. But we're going to do a member of the month every month. Luke is it. But just help support the show. That's the bottom line. If you love the show, we're giving you hours of free content a week. We're going to be traveling a lot during college basketball. Become a member. All you got to do is click that member button at the top. Luke is our member of the month. We appreciate his support. And oh, by the way, a big old box, I should say, of Cauli Puffs. We appreciate Luke's support. With that said, it is a busy Tuesday in the world of sports. No more time to waste. Let's get to The topic of the day. I'll be honest. I think this is the biggest story in sports right now. Okay. It is the wild, crazy situation going on with Lane Kiffin. Okay. And if you've been following this channel, if you've been following anything college football related, you know that really it's gotten crazy. And a little bit of a backstory. I'm not going to do the big victory lap now, but I think we started talking about this on last Tuesday's show. If you were paying attention to Lane Kiffin's press conferences, the questions were becoming less and less about a historic season that Ole Miss is in the middle of, and more about his future. Last Tuesday, so this was or Monday press conference, they were openly asking him about the Florida job at his Monday press conference going into the game against Florida and what would essentially clinch a college football playoff spot. After the win against Florida, you basically clinched a spot in the college football playoff. The press conference, as we discussed on Sunday's show, became, hey, can you commit right now to being the Ole Miss head coach? And so I said, this is coming to a head, and I think it's coming much quicker than we anticipated because of what we learned on Monday afternoon. Okay, so this is why you need to be subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod. We don't generally do a lot of content on Mondays. We have the big Sunday show, and that kind of takes us into Tuesday morning. But I only bring it up because of the fact that, Monday, just this crazy story breaks. And it's wild because, if you go on social media and we're trying to figure out what's fact and what's fiction, but, early Monday, you start seeing reports of like Lane Kiffin's family is touring high schools in Gainesville. And you're like, oh, come on, man. Let's pump the brakes here, right? And so by Monday afternoon, it becomes official. Like, no, this is actually happening. We all saw the Pete Nakos report via On3, and it was Nakos, Brett McMurphy, Chris Lowe. Like, it was a team effort on this one. But what we found out pretty quickly was that Lane Kiffin's family, now Lane Kiffin, to his credit, I guess, was in Oxford on Monday, but his family was touring schools and touring things in Gainesville on Sunday. And on Monday, his family was in Baton Rouge. And so that was where we left it. That was the last update that we had. I think a couple things have happened since then. I mean, I think the first thing that happened is that we got the news about the ultimatum from Ole Miss. By the way, we have less today. You'll see there's less graphics, less video, stuff like that. We were dealing with the internet outage this morning, so that, we'd usually have more pop-ups, things like that. Nobody's fault. Sometimes the internet just goes out. So with Lane Kiffin, right, is that the big update since we did our live taping on Monday afternoon is that Ole Miss is ready to initiate an ultimatum. Best coach of this era, best season maybe in school history, and I believe they are very much ready to go ahead and actually give him an ultimatum. And if he is not ready to commit to them long-term, I think there is a possibility that the Egg Bowl is being coached by someone other than Lane Kiffin, and absolutely that a college football playoff game could be being coached by an interim as well. So that was the latest as of, I guess it would have been Monday night. But what I will say is I had a night to sleep on it. I also spent a good chunk of Monday texting with people in the know. I was texting with somebody that I would consider, kind of knows some stuff at Ole Miss. I'll leave it there. And the conclusions that I've come to are two. Is that one, this is very much a real story. I'll tell you what I think I found out behind the scenes, but that this is very much a real story. This is like I think there's this narrative that oh, this is all just Lane Kiffin playing games and he's being goofy and whatever, and he's gonna ride in on the white horse and sign the no. You don't send your wife and kids or ex-wife or whatever Layla Kiffin is now. You don't send them on a plane to other cities as a gimmick or a ploy. But what I do believe has also happened is this. I believe the ultimatum is very real, but I also believe that this all leaking out has very much sped up the process. And if there's any silver lining for this with Ole Miss fans, it is that I think you're actually going to get an answer sooner rather than later, okay? So as far as Monday is concerned, by the way, I think I actually know where this is going to end up. There may be a cryptic message that Lane Kiffin put out that we'll get to in a minute. So how did we get here, right? And so I think, to even backtrack to Monday, and I know we did a lot of this already, but I guess what I would say is a couple things. Is one, I don't believe this is all intentional, right? Like I've heard this theory of like, again, that this is Lane Kiffin playing games and Jimmy Sexton wanted it out there. I don't believe that's what happened at all. What I do believe has happened, what I do believe is real, is the fact that I do believe that Lane Kiffin is keeping his options open, right? Or I think the intention was to keep his options open as long as he can. No different than anyone with options. James Franklin, we talked about it on Sunday. Would he commit to Virginia Tech? He did, but he had options. You go on down the list. People that have options are going to keep them open as long as possible. But what I would also say is I do think where things got weird is that my understanding is that the Florida thing was pretty covert. Okay, so Lane Kiffin's family was in Gainesville on Sunday, and I don't think a lot of people knew that, and I think it was kept under the rug. And the reason that I believe it was kept under the rug is because Florida's been going after Lane Kiffin for well over a year now, right? Whatever you think of Scott Strickland, the Florida AD, not very good, has not been successful hiring football coaches. Frankly, should have hired a football coach, should have hired Lane Kiffin the last time instead of hiring Billy Napier. But they know how to run a search covertly, right? And so Layla Kiffin got in and out with her son of Gainesville on Sunday without anybody knowing. And I think it's because Florida knew all along this was going to be their number one candidate. They've been in communication. Remember, last year, Ryan McGee put out a report a few weeks ago. Ryan McGee from ESPN did that big Lane Kiffin documentary. And if you remember, he put out a report that Florida boosters were basically running around town last year at this time, early November, saying that Lane Kiffin was coming. It was a done deal, whatever. So Florida has been in communication with Kiffin and his camp for over a year now. Where I believe it got complicated and where I believe it got screwed up was actually the whole LSU component of it, okay? I think LSU is just flying by the seat of their pants. And to take it a step further, I think LSU is as big of a mess behind the scenes as it appears to be publicly. Okay, we all know what happened when Brian Kelly got fired, governor got involved, whatever. But remember what happened after that. They hire a school president a couple days later. They name the interim head coach, the interim AD, had kind of been the number 2 for years and years and years, and he'd been around the athletic department forever, okay? So he gets named the number 2. Then the school president comes out and says, well, I'm just getting to know him. He's not really the full-time AD. I know I just said he's the full-time AD, but he isn't. And so you basically have an AD that, yes, he has been involved in these coaching searches, but he hasn't really been involved the way that Scott Strickland has, the way that, frankly, the previous LSU AD, why am I blanking on his name? Scott Woodward was. And so basically my understanding is like the way this got out is that LSU is kind of an S shell. LSU doesn't know what they're doing. And LSU, they got more leaks than the freaking Titanic, okay? And so that is how we got there. And I also believe that this is the situation that we find ourselves in because strictly of LSU. Florida was able to get the Kiffin family in and out of town. Nobody really knew. By Monday, everybody knew because LSU is a disaster, okay? But let's spin this forward because I do think there is a silver lining here. I think if LSU had not either gotten involved or been able to do this more covertly, I think Lane Kiffin really could have kicked the can down the road. By the way, I'll say this. I know there's all sorts of just rumors on how this leaked, who it leaked from. I think it actually leaked from the Ole Miss side. Now, people say, no, it's Jimmy Sexton. He's trying to create a scene. What does Jimmy Sexton benefit from all this? Lane Kiffin is going to be the highest paid coach anywhere in college football, wherever he's coaching next year. If it's Florida, LSU, Ole Miss, whatever. If he goes to the NFL, he's going to make 15 or 20 million a year. And so I just bring it up. It doesn't benefit Lane Kiffin for all of this to get out. All it does is cause chaos. And so I believe Ole Miss was the one who actually leaked this. And I solely bring it up because in my opinion, I think it actually all works out better for Ole Miss. If this doesn't get out, I think you can kick the can down the road. And I do think Lane Kiffin comes to his media availability next week. Remember, Ole Miss has a bye this week. Schedule worked out very nicely for Lane Kiffin, by the way. But if this doesn't come out, I think that Lane Kiffin can go to his press conference on Monday and sit there and say, hey, listen, man, nothing's changed since the last time I saw you after the Florida game. We're focused on going to the college football playoff. I love it here. It's disrespectful to the kids. We're trying to finish the season. And again, to reiterate, this has been the Kiffin stance. I want to wait until the end of the year. It's what I always do. Why I believe it came out of Ole Miss is I believe that they don't want to wait. They don't want to wait till the end of the Egg Bowl. They don't, let me put it this way. They don't want to beat their rival, hopefully, finish the best regular season of the modern era, get ready for a college football playoff. By the way, potentially an SEC championship game as well. Ole Miss would need some help, but they haven't been eliminated there. They don't want all of that going on while they don't know if their head coach is moving on. And so to me, this is actually a silver lining for Ole Miss that it got out. Because in my opinion, I think we're actually going to get a resolution pretty soon. Now, as people watch this, it is 11:17 Eastern time on Tuesday, November 18th. You may see this at 7 p.m. Eastern. You may see it at 1 a.m. going into Wednesday. You may see it on Wednesday afternoon. This stuff is always subject to change. I do think we are actually getting a resolution pretty soon. To me, I think if he's going to stay at Ole Miss, I think we know by Friday, probably Saturday, maybe Sunday at the latest. Because in my opinion, I think for all the chaos, all the this, all the that, Lane Kiffin even understands. Like Lane Kiffin, you can say whatever you want. I know he plays games and he's on Twitter all the time. We're going to show you some of his tweets in a minute. But whatever you think about Lane Kiffin, I do think he's smart enough to understand. By Monday, I have another press conference in the lead up to the Egg Bowl. If I don't have any sort of resolution, every single question at that press conference is going to be about my future, is going to be about Florida, is going to be about LSU, is going to be about my family going to Gainesville, going to Baton Rouge, whatever. And so I think he needs to make a decision now, and I think it's coming. And I think it favors Ole Miss. If this never got out and he could wait until after the Egg Bowl, and then, of course, remember, there's about a 2-week window between the end of the regular season and the start of the college football playoff. Maybe there's a world where he leaves campus for a few days. He has time to think about it. But the fact that this got out, I think he has to make a decision full speed ahead here over the next couple days. I think it's got to be before Monday. That's the first Egg Bowl, the first, week. I guess it would be week 14 media availability. And I think even he knows I can't go to the podium without a definitive answer. Now, if you don't get an answer, I don't know how quickly Ole Miss is ready to move off of him. But I do think if he's going to go into Egg Bowl week like, I'm not giving you an answer, I don't think there's a 0% possibility that Ole Miss is coaching with an interim in the Egg Bowl. So we'll see what happens from there, but I think this benefits Ole Miss. And if I had to handicap this right now, I actually do think he will return to Ole Miss. I think there's really three factors. I think all the talk in all these interviews he's done about truly being happy, I think it's true. I think two, on top of it, I think the timing actually works out well for Ole Miss. I don't think he can wait weeks and months. And three, it's got to come to an end. And so I think something happens. I think it happens soon. And I'll also say this. I know Kiffin is a master manipulator on social media. He's getting awfully emotional on his Twitter feed, though. I mean, he's getting a little emotional on his Twitter feed. He actually just posted something right before we went on air. As a matter of fact, Matt, before I get up the tweets that I sent you earlier in the morning, I do want to read you the most recent tweet that he put out, because goodness gracious, this man is an emotional guy, or at least he's certainly playing the part on social media. Let me see here if I can find the most recent tweet here. Have the best Tuesday, everybody. And it is from, it is a passage that says, how do you know what to do next? You ask yourself, honestly, what would your 90-year-old self advise you to do? What they would have you wished, what the 90-year-old would have wished you had done? You ask yourself, honestly, what you've sensed from the beginning, what you have ignored, what you have quieted and distracted from yourself. You make two lists, the positives and the negatives, and you weigh them. And if there is one thing on the left that overpowers the dozen things on the right, then you trust that. You ask yourself, what path will make you more of the person you're meant to be? Again, the passage, how do you know what to do next? You ask yourself honestly, what would your 90-year-old self advise you to do? Emo Lane Kiffin off the top rope. A couple other tweets. The first one, this was from yesterday, was the life-size Lane Kiffin. I guess it was a pseudo bobblehead doll around town. That's from Blue Sky in Oxford. By the way, not Blue Sky, the social media app that nobody uses. He also, I thought this was sort of important. multiple quote tweets of Walker Jones. For people who do not know Walker Jones, I actually met him at an event about 2 or 3 weeks ago, or a year or so ago. He is the leader of the Ole Miss collective. And he's kind of known as like the godfather. Like Ole Miss was the first one to really kind of figure out the collective thing. He's a former football player at Ole Miss. Matt, you can pop up that tweet whenever. But basically, Walker Jones put pictures of the stadium. Can't wait for the Egg Bowl. Let's pack that stadium. Lane Kiffin quote tweets him. But Walker Jones, I believe, is as much of a right-hand man in the athletic department as Lane Kiffin has. You could drop that tweet. And so for him to be quote tweeting Walker Jones, like if there's anybody at the Ole Miss athletic department that I believe he is in touch with, it's Walker Jones. Because, oh, by the way, if he stays and if you're going into the portal in a couple weeks, you need to have your money raised, your money funded, whatever. And so I think the fact that he's quote tweeting and pseudo communicating with him, I think is a totally positive sign. And then finally, I saw this one again, emo Lane Kiffin popping in. Matt, you could pop up that last tweet. And I think he might have even said this in the Ross Dellinger interview, but Keith Carter, the AD at Ole Miss, tweeted out a picture of the stadium that said Utopia, talking about obviously Vaught-Hemingway Stadium down in Oxford. Beautiful stadium, by the way. I've been before. And Lane Kiffin with the great tweet, he said, "We're currently in the good old days." And so to me, besides the fact that he's being crazy emo, I think he realizes like I do think, again, all of the self-reflective stuff that felt made up, that felt contrived, that felt whatever, I think he is really a reflective person. He's thinking, I hate to say it, but, both of his parents passed away, and I think that's kind of changed his perspective on things. The fact that Lane Kiffin is tweeting, "We're currently in the good old days." One, I love that message. And two, I also do kind of believe that, you know what, maybe, just maybe this guy is going to stay. But to go back to what I said from the beginning, I actually think this is actually a best case scenario for Ole Miss because this got leaked. He's going to have to answer soon. I'm just going to guess. This part I don't know. I think we get a statement or a release on Friday. Head into the weekend, kind of overshadow the college football news cycle going into what's otherwise a quiet week. And then you can go into Egg Bowl week without any concerns, any questions. I would worry, though, if he does come out of this weekend without a contract extension. I think there's a possibility he doesn't coach the Egg Bowl. And I think there's a very likely reality that he is not the head coach at Ole Miss next year. Matt, since the Lane Kiffin stuff is popping, it's clearly the biggest story. There's other stuff I want to get to, but are there any good questions or comments on Lane Kiffin before we get to the break and talk a little James Franklin? Because we could do a full show on Lane Kiffin at this point. Luke, hopefully Ole Miss writes a very prohibitive buyout for Kiffin to go somewhere else into the extension. All I'll say is this goes back to the whole leverage thing, is that if they want to keep him, and they're going to have to, I hate to say it, but bend over to his demands. I mean, this is how these contracts ends up the way they are. I remember years ago, Jimbo Fisher had the you got to pay me 100% if you fire me, but it's $0 for me to leave. And how do you end up with a contract like that? It's because at the time, Jimbo Fisher was in demand, and whoever was coming after him, whether it was real or not, Jimmy Sexton convinced the school that could be the case. So if you're Keith Carter, I think that the situation becomes, how much do you actually get back? You're going to have to give a lot, right? You're going to have to give a salary, player pool, NIL funding. But what do you get back in return to guarantee that this is not an annual thing? I think that becomes very interesting. I don't know that you're going to get the prohibitive buyout, though, because, again, Lane Kiffin has all the power, all the control in this situation. And by the way, one other thing, Keith Carter, the AD, remember, this was about a month ago now. It was right after Cignetti signed the extension. Keith Carter did an interview with the On3 site basically saying, yeah, we're trying to do the same with Coach Kiffin. So he has been working hard behind the scenes. I think Kiffin, like I said, has been doing very little to really help the cause. But in his defense, he's been winning games. So we'll see what happens from there. Anything else from the chat? In the end, Kiffin and Sexton get paid. There's no doubt, Paul. There's no doubt. I mean, Kiffin and Sexton are going to get paid off of all of this. Listen, there are reports right now. Ole Miss has a deal on his desk to make him the highest paid coach in college football. more than Kirby Smart, more than Kurt Signetti, more than Dabo Sweeney, and that Florida is willing to match it, and that LSU might even be willing to surpass it. We don't know all the facts. We don't know what's fiction. Wherever I've said it for weeks, wherever Lane Kiffin ends up next year, he will be the highest paid coach in college football. Because, again, he has all the leverage. When you have legitimate options in life, you're going to be in a situation where you get whatever the heck you want. I'm going to browse the chat really quick here, see if there's anything else that catches my eye. Kevin says, I think Kiffin stays in Oxford. When he does, I really hope the people in Gainesville have a contingency plan. This is a great point, Kevin. So Kevin says, I think Kiffin stays in Oxford. When he does, I really hope the people in Gainesville have a contingency plan. My impression is they are leaning so hard in Kiffin, they really don't have a contingency plan. So that part I actually agree with. And I was thinking about that, is that I think from Florida's perspective, and again, that's why they wanted to keep the Kiffin family coming in secret, is because it allows them more time to get him out of Ole Miss. Once the LSU part leaks, LSU's kind of back, LSU throws a wrinkle into it because some view it as a better job. I don't know that it is right now because the place is such an S show. But at the same time, I am with Kevin, is that I think it has been Lane Kiffin, and I'll defend, Scott Strickland is the AD at Florida. People don't defend him very often because he's basically for his life in hiring football coaches. But I will defend him from the perspective that I think he did everything right behind the scenes. And I think when he fired Billy Napier, he felt pretty good that Lane Kiffin was going to be the next head coach. Now, what he couldn't have anticipated was that Ole Miss was going to have the season that they are, that they're in the playoff, right? I think even, and it's funny how the season is shaking out, right? But imagine if they had lost to Oklahoma. They were down in the fourth quarter against Oklahoma. Let's say they lose to Oklahoma. They're sitting there at 9-2 going into the last week. 10-2 might not get them in the playoff because now all of a sudden you're behind Georgia, you're behind Oklahoma, you're behind A&M, maybe Bama. And so I think Scott Strickland, when the job opened, had good reason to believe that Lane Kiffin would be his next head coach. But things change, and it's no different than anything in life, right? The longer something goes on, the less likely you feel good that it's going to happen, whether it's a negotiation, whether it's a recruitment, right? How many recruitments it's a done deal and then the kid doesn't commit and then he whatever, and then he reopens it and then he thinks about it. And then all of a sudden the done deal is not a done deal anymore. And so I'm with Kevin here is I'll be honest, I don't even know who the candidates would be at Florida at this point if they don't get Kiffin. It feels like Eli Drinkwitz is kind of trending more towards Penn State. Could they get back in the mix with Coach Drink? I don't think Marcus Freeman is going anywhere unless the Ohio State coaching job opens up, which I don't think that it will. And so I just bring it up because, in my opinion, I don't even know where Florida would go if they don't get Kiffin. And I think LSU actually screwed up a lot of things for Florida this week. Florida did a good job. They kept it under wraps that the Kiffin family was in Gainesville, but of course it got out thanks to LSU. Another question or two before we get to the break here. Let's see if there's anything else, and I'll start scrolling the chat as well. A lot of comments. You guys are doing awesome today. LSU. Let's see. Luke says the can get better players at Florida isn't really as relevant now with the portal. Florida has proven over the last 15 years that being close to talent doesn't guarantee success. I agree with that. I disagree with it to a sentiment, though, is that when you go into the portal, a couple things. One, the portal is obviously much more transactional. And you look at the portal, right? Oftentimes, yes, guys are going for fit and can you get them to the pros and this and that, but it does become transactional. I think if you do have that good high school base, it allows you to recruit a lot of guys that you can then develop and retain, right? So you look at Georgia. Most of Georgia's best players, yes, I know Zachariah Branch is a transfer. I know that this guy or that guy may be. Most of those guys were brought in and developed internally. It's the same at Texas. Texas doesn't really use the portal except in moments of crisis, moments of emergency, And so I think it allows you to bring guys in, retain guys. And I do think if you're close to home, it makes you less likely to transfer, right? This was my biggest gripe with Lincoln Riley and USC is, for years he kept saying, we're going after the best players. If it's not SoCal, whatever. It's like, yeah, but you can go after the 5-star from Ohio or Texas and maybe you get them. But if he comes and he redshirts and he's 3,000 miles away from home, he's not going to be loyal to you the way that maybe the 4-star from San Bernardino, which is 20 minutes from campus or 45 minutes from campus, is going to be loyal because he's close to friends, he's close to family, he can get home when he needs to. If he's struggling, mom and dad are right there. So I do disagree. I think even more so in football than basketball. Like basketball, there's only so many guys, right? And so basketball, everybody kind of knows their role. Like you're not going to bring in 6 guys who aren't going to play unless they know they're not going to play. Whereas in football, you have dozens of guys that if things go well, aren't going to see the field. How do you retain them? What makes it more likely is that they're close to home. They love the university. They grew up going there. I do think it matters less than in the past, but I do still think it matters. Now, I would also say about the state of Florida specifically, you also just have to battle so many more, incoming fronts. Like, what is the war term? Like the attacking from all fronts. It's like you got Miami in the south, you got Florida State in the north, Georgia comes in, Alabama comes in, Auburn comes in, LSU has gotten a guy or two through the years. So it does make it a little bit different than, say, like a Louisiana, even in Ohio. But I do think there is something to that. All right, I'll tell you what, unless we got another great Lane Kiffin comment or two, let's take a quick break. By the way, you guys can definitely keep dropping your comments in the chat about Lane Kiffin. We'll definitely continue to discuss this. And if we get more question, happy to keep that conversation going. What I do want to do, though, by the way, I like this one from Luke. Keith Carter is the Ole Miss AD. Major props to Keith Carter for having the stones to draw a line in the sand with Kiffin. No one is bigger than the program. Should absolutely not let him coach in the CFP if he's not committed to Ole Miss. So one, I agree with this. And I would say this, the person that I spoke with kind of in that Ole Miss orbit on Monday, he said, he's like, poor Keith does not deserve this. Keith Carter's been trying to get this extension done since about week 4, week 5 of this year. Like he knew, you could tell by week 2, the writing was on the wall at Florida, right? Remember, they lose to USF in week 2. And so you could see the writing on the wall was coming at Florida that Billy Napier was not going to survive. But remember, they went into the bye after week 4, and we discussed it at the time. The only reason Billy Napier was able to keep his job was because of the fact that they were going into the bye. They didn't want to fire him before the bye or before they played 5 games and the whole team redshirted. So Keith Carter's been doing his job, but I think there's a couple variables here. Is that one, and by the way, because I saw a lot of this on Twitter, people don't understand, like, why would you fire him? How are you going to get rid of him? You owe it to him to let him finish the season. No, you don't. And I'll tell you why. It's because let's say he doesn't even win a playoff game. But if he wins a playoff game, you're now talking about January where you're going to have to start looking for a coach. If he doesn't win a playoff game, you're still looking at late December when you're going to all the good head coach, all the good coaching candidates are going to be gone. John Summerall, who was an assistant at Ole Miss, if he wants to leave Tulane, he will have a new head coaching job. And if he doesn't, he will probably have signed an extension at Tulane. Alex Golish, whoever you deem to be the next guy at Ole Miss, that guy's going to be off the market by December 24th or 25th or 26th, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, when you are eliminated from the playoff. And so I don't blame Keith Carter at all. The other thing is, too, you have momentum as a program. And the worst way to lose momentum is to wait until Lane Kiffin makes his decision on December 27th, miss out on any good coaching candidates, and have 1 million guys enter the portal. And so if Lane Kiffin's going to be fired or Lane Kiffin's going to have to resign or Lane Kiffin's going to whatever, I don't blame him. Because now it's like, okay, you're going to play under an interim. We're going to have a new head coach in place probably by December 10th. You're going to meet him. You're going to get to know him, whatever. I could go on and on. It's a great comment by Luke. I also think, as importantly, it shows why I think Lane Kiffin is going to be back. I mean, all I'll say, I think the other variable that I maybe haven't talked about enough and maybe should be talking about more is the fact that all of the stuff that Lane Kiffin has said about, it's, I've learned and I'm getting older and blah, 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 and this and that. Basically, that all goes out the window if you just bail on your team in the middle of a playoff run where you have a chance to win a championship. Your reputation that you've spent 10 years rebuilding totally goes out the window. That's another variable on why I think he ends up staying. Last comment before we get to the break, because this is a very important one. I was talking about my SeatGeek promo. J.K. Marshall says, the Backstreet Boys are still around? Backstreet Boys are doing a monster tour of the Sphere right now, okay? Out in Vegas. I'll call a spade. I'll own it. I was going to buy tickets for my wife for like Christmas. It's like $400 for those tickets. So the Backstreet Boys are very much still in play. They are very much rocking out at the Sphere. And that is why someone is using SeatGeek.com promo code Torres to get $20 off. SeatGeek.com promo code Torres gets $20 off. And that is why somebody was using them for Backstreet Boys tickets, because they were $400. No. Producer Matt's in my ear. No, it's not $400. It's $400 a ticket. A ticket for the Backstreet Boys at the Sphere. You can Google it, right? You go to SeatGeek.com. That's why you need SeatGeek.com promo code Torres to get those $20 off, because you're trying to save money wherever you can. All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. You know who can afford Backstreet Boys tickets? James Franklin, because he got a nice $9 million check from Penn State yesterday, and he is now the Virginia Tech head coach. Come back, discuss James Franklin, maybe his affinity for the Backstreet Boys. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Couple updates from social media. One, I have Luther Campbell, the Miami guy, chirping at me about my Lane Kiffin takes. That's one. Two, did see that Lane Kiffin is going to be on Pat McAfee today. So I think what I said is going to hold up. I do believe that I don't think he goes – maybe he's going to go on McAfee and it's going to be crazy and he's just going to duck all questions. I don't know. This thing's going to come to a resolution here soon. You know what else is going to come to a resolution soon? The debate about the best sports book on planet Earth. It is Circa. It is our hotel and casino partner, and I want to talk about them for half a second, okay? So I'm going to be in Vegas next week for the Players Era College Basketball Tournament. All the good teams are going to be there. Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Houston, whoever. Who are the other ones? Michigan's going to be there. A lot of good teams. And so I bring it up because while I'm there, I'll be staying at Circa. It is our hotel and casino partner with the best sports book on planet Earth. It is quite literally the biggest sports book on planet Earth, okay? They have Stadium Swim. But the great part is, here's the deal. I know that not all of you can get out to the West Coast. I know that not all of you can get out to Vegas to hang out with me next week. So here is the good news. Circa has opened up a brand new sports book at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. All of the same great things about the Circa Sportsbook in Las Vegas. They're coming to the East Coast. They're coming to Kentucky. It's about 30, 40 minutes from Nashville, somewhere in that area. Best place to watch games. Listen, you don't have to download a million apps, Peacock this, Hulu that, whatever. All you got to do is go to Circa Sportsbook, great hospitality, all the games, everything you want to watch. I'll credit Circa. They really do cater to sports fans. So I was out there the opening day of college basketball. They had the Field of 68 games. I remember Field of 68 was doing that big live stream on YouTube. It was the only live sporting event at about 8 or 9 a.m. Eastern. I went down to get coffee in the sports book. Every TV was on whatever game it was, St. Bonaventure, Eastern Illinois, or something like that. So Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. Make sure to check it out. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's go ahead and talk about a story that broke right in the midst of the Lane Kiffin hysteria on Monday afternoon, and it was the future of James Franklin. Okay, now if you listen to this show on Sunday, sometimes in life you got to take the L. I said James Franklin, no different than what I think Lane Kiffin is doing. Maybe we get a resolution by the time you hear this if you're not watching live. I thought James Franklin, I thought the leak on Saturday to Bruce Feldman and Pete Nakos and Pete Thamel and all them, I thought it was very clearly a play by Virginia Tech of like, if you're not going to be the guy, we like you, you like us, but if you're not going to commit, we got to go ahead and move on, right? It was the old, your now wife telling you, if you don't propose to me by New Year's Eve, it's over. That was basically Virginia Tech last weekend. And I did say, I think James Franklin is going to wait. I think he's going to take his time. I think he's going to wait to see if Florida State opens up. Well, it turns out I was dead wrong because Monday afternoon, James Franklin is officially announced as the Virginia Tech head coach. Now, I will say this. If you're watching this on replay, to be totally transparent, James Franklin is literally doing a press conference right now, so there's going to be some things that I miss, but let's talk about the hire, and let's talk about, by the way, why I truly believe, bottom of my heart, it's going to work. And more importantly, this guy, one day on the job, is already making moves. Okay, so in terms of the hire itself, listen, my take, I've said this a million times, is that I like to have unique opinions on stuff, right? I like to have unique takes. I like to have unique whatever. And I hate when my take is everybody else's take, but my take is everybody else's take on this one. It feels like James Franklin has a 99% approval rating as the hire at Virginia Tech. Now, of course, I heard Dan Wolken whining about it. Well, he's not good in one-score games, and what does that mean? And it's like, first of all, Dan Wolken, it could be 70 and sunny, and he'd be mad because he's getting too tan. Field full of puppies running in a meadow, he'd be like, oh my God, what's going on there? So like, Dan Wolken's probably not the best guy to, share his takes on anything. But I just bring it up because as far as this hire is concerned, listen, I love it for all the same reasons most people do. I think one, what is the biggest, James Franklin's just a good coach. And I think it can be brought up, the record against Ohio State, the record against Michigan, whatever, the record against top 10 teams. But let's look at the overall record because I looked this up. I was blown away by this, okay? So in his last 8 full seasons as the Penn State head coach. So you would obviously take out this year because he got fired 4 or 5 games in. I think it was 6 games, but whatever. And the 2020 season, which they played 4 or 5 games because of COVID. Of his last 8 seasons as head coach, he has won at least 9 games in 7 of the last 8 seasons. He's won 10 games or more in 6 of the last 8 seasons. And it was just a year ago that he was quite literally a player or 2 away from playing for a national championship. Okay. So you have that situation. You have the fact that basically if you take out the COVID year and his first year, he's a 70% win percentage guy. But the biggest thing that I like about James Franklin is the fact that what is the biggest? Oh, he can't beat the great teams. Well, one, there are no great teams in the ACC. Basically, if you're not playing Miami week 1, you're not playing a great team right now. Clemson kind of stinks. Florida State kind of stinks. They might be firing their head coach. Louisville is good, but they haven't reached that great level yet. Maybe Georgia Tech gets there. Miami, they're great in September. You get them after October 15th. It's kind of a crap show. You don't know what the hell you're going to get from them. They lose to everybody. So I just bring it up because there are no great teams. And here's the counter to that. Even if there are great teams, guess what? if the ceiling with James Franklin is 10-2, first of all, 10-2 puts you in the playoff conversation now. Imagine when we go to 16 teams or more, it's certainly going to put you in the playoff conversation. But considering where Virginia Tech has been, I think they'll take a bunch of 10-2 seasons, and then they'll worry about not beating top 10 teams in 2029 and 2030 after they've, reestablished themselves as a power. And so to me, this is the no-brainer of all no-brainers. The floor of James Franklin is better than you've been. This stat kind of blew me away. Virginia Tech, they haven't had a 10-win season since 2016. That part didn't blow me away. What blew me away, this was crazy. Virginia Tech has not, how about this? They have not even been ranked in the poll since 2021. So 4 full seasons, essentially, since they've even been ranked in the top 25. Think about all the teams that have been ranked during that stretch. Virginia Tech is not one of them. So James Franklin, to me, is a home run. And here's the other variable that I think is important. James Franklin, on top of all of this, is motivated. This isn't an old guy just taking a check at the end of his career. This isn't Brian Kelly going to LSU because he thinks life is going to be easier and he doesn't want to recruit. This isn't when Kentucky tried to hire Mark Stoops and Mark Stoops was going to take a check and check out. This is a guy who, again, was a player or two away from playing for a national championship that got fired from a job that he thought he was going to retire from in 10 or 12 or 15 years. And so I give him credit. He knew this was the job that he wanted. He went and got it. And I think he's motivated. And I think you're going to get the best version of James Franklin. And listen, I think the Calipari analogy, Calipari at Arkansas, is totally fair. Calipari needed a fresh start, needed a fan base to believe in him, needed to be allowed to do it his way. And I know it's not perfect for Cal, but it's certainly been better. And I think it's going to be the same for James Franklin. And as far as the motivated part is concerned, this is where I would be worried if I was not even college football. The biggest, who the biggest loser was of this move from James Franklin? It was Penn State. Because Penn State, one, it's clear they're not going to get a coach that's more accomplished than James Franklin. Now, time will tell if they get a better coach than James Franklin, but they're not going to get a more accomplished coach than James Franklin. So that's one. And then two, on top of it, the coach that you just had, who built Penn State into a consistent top 10 program, not quite, but almost exclusively with players from the DMV, which is Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. That guy is going to be, guess what? Recruiting in the DMV, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Okay, so first of all, go through the rosters. Virtually all of their good players are from one of those areas. Now, Drew Aller was technically an Ohio kid, but he got passed up by Ohio State. But everybody else, Katron Allen, originally from Virginia. Abdul Carter, originally from Pennsylvania. Nick Singleton, originally from Pennsylvania. Now, look, I understand that a lot of those guys would have ended up at Penn State anyway because Penn State's a great school and Pennsylvania kids largely want to go to Pennsylvania. I don't think it changes the fact that this gets tougher for Penn State. And on top of that, I saw a stat that blew me away and would have me terrified if I was a Penn State fan and fired the you-know-what up if I was a Virginia Tech fan. Matt popped a tweet from PSU Recruiting. Decommitments since the firing of their head coaches. Florida has had 0 decommitments since the firing of Billy Napier. LSU has had 1 since the firing of Brian Kelly. I actually think they just got a second one, so I think it's technically 2. Penn State, if you're not watching live, take a guess. Is it 2? Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 3? How about 17 decommitments from Penn State's recruiting class, currently 62nd in the country? And I think what would have to terrify you if you're a Penn State fan, or maybe I should be more positive, fire you up if you're a Virginia Tech fan. Let's remember, there are no restrictions on what James Franklin can do as an unemployed head coach. So he is now employed. But when he was unemployed, guess what he was doing the past couple months? He was sitting on the phone, figuring out his next plan, plotting things out, and there is no restriction to who he can talk to, when he can talk to him, whatever. What do I mean by that? Well, we know with the NCAA, there are restrictions on recruiting. There's dead periods. You can't have kids on campus. You can't communicate with them. You can't do whatever. There's no dead period when you're a fired former football coach. There's no restrictions on how often you can text, how often you can call, how often you can talk to parents, how often you can talk to kids. And I'll tell you what, Matt, I want you to pop up the last tweet I sent from the recruiting guy from 24/7 about official visits, which was expected. This was from Brian Doan of 24/7 Sports, who this was before the hiring of James Franklin, said, I've had multiple 2026 prospects tell me that if James Franklin was hired by a school, they would take an official visit for signing day. And so all of a sudden, to the degree in which I just got a Lane Kiffin text. I thought it was important. It wasn't. To the degree in which I lost my train of thought. I got a stupid Lane Kiffin text. Whatever. We'll edit all this out. So the 2026 prospects, whatever. We'll see how many visit, but let's do some simple mental math. 17 kids have decommitted from Penn State since James Franklin got fired. He is now the head coach at Virginia. If you don't think that he's going to flip a lot of them to Virginia Tech, not all of them, some of them have already committed to other places. Some of them have crystal balls to other places. But if you don't think that he is going to get a lot of them to visit Virginia Tech and potentially come to Virginia Tech, you don't know what you're talking about. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this. If I was James Franklin, you know what the ultimate FU would be? It would be however many of those kids that you have that are planning on following you. So let's say even if it's only 5, 6, 7, 8, I would have one commit a day every day for the next whatever. If there's a kid that doesn't even need to take a visit, knows he wants to play for you, maybe he already took a visit to Virginia Tech during the recruiting process and he knows he's ready to commit, have him commit today. Then have another one commit tomorrow. Then have another one commit after that. Then do this, then do that. And I mean, you just talk about knives in the side of Penn State and things to get Virginia Tech fans fired up. That would be it. As a matter of fact, James Franklin, to his credit, is already getting going. I was scrolling on social media on Monday, hours after he took the job. What's the kid's name? Matt, you can pop it up. Oh, no. This was Roseby Labuntis, and I apologize for this. So after a great phone call with James Franklin, I am grateful and thankful to receive an offer from Virginia Tech. For people who are not familiar with this player, and I apologize if I totally butchered his name, he was a player who had been committed to Penn State. He actually flipped to Syracuse, then decommitted, was considering Penn State again. Well, guess what ended up happening? He got an offer from Virginia Tech, and it sounds like he's fired up that James Franklin has been back in touch. Just minutes after that, we saw our buddy, Penn State commitment or former Penn State commitment, Matthew Lama, tweeted out, this is from 24/7 Sports. It did not take long for new Virginia Tech head coach James Franklin to reach out to linebacker Matthew Lama, who is committed to Penn State but has been looking around. So Matthew Lama, 4-star linebacker, has been committed to Penn State. Guess who's recruiting him? Your former head coach, who he has the entire relationship with. And so I just bring it up to very simply say, James Franklin has hit the ground running. He said, my vision is simple: to restore unmatched excellence, to build something that lasts, and to serve this university, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and our amazing fan base with honor, integrity, and passion. I look forward to getting to work with our players, our staff, and the entire Virginia Tech community. That is James Franklin. He's getting to work. He's already got one former Penn State kid an offer. He's in communication with another. And Penn State, you better put some locks on that cupboard, because James Franklin is coming for everybody. And I'd be fired up if I was a Virginia Tech fan. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take one more break, get to a couple of your questions. Then very quickly, we will just preview tonight's college hoops. I don't want to dive too deep because obviously the games are in just a couple hours. But college hoops, Champions Classic, Kentucky, Michigan State, Kansas, Duke. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauli Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauli Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauliPuffs.com. That's CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, one bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauliPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauli Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauli Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. So fired up to be with you here today. A lot of college football. We're monitoring Lane Kiffin, who will be joining Pat McAfee later this afternoon. But we are also monitoring what should be a fun night of college hoops. Okay, so we'll be quick on this. The games are tonight in just a few hours. Champions Classic. So Champions Classic used to be kind of the unofficial kickoff event, sometimes the actual kickoff event to college hoops. It's the event every year that has Kansas, Duke, Michigan State, and Kentucky in it. It used to be kind of the second week of the year, right? So you'd start the season, you play a week, and then it's that first big kickoff event. There were a couple of years it was the opener of the season. I remember the year that Zion was at Duke. It actually opened the season, Kentucky versus Duke. Zion and Duke beat Kentucky by 100. Anyway, bring it up because it's tonight. It's Tuesday night. We'll talk about it certainly on Wednesday's show. But let's go ahead and just give a quick preview, some picks. Let's start with the early game, Kentucky versus Michigan State. And by the way, I bring up the timing of it because, in my opinion, I think it's hurt college basketball by pushing this back. I mean, and it's hurt it because Darren Peterson probably isn't going to play for Kansas. Kentucky's starting point guard is hurt. And I do feel like there's less juice in this event than there has been in the past. I think you got to start it either to start the season, certainly the second week of the season. But here we are. Let's get to Michigan State versus Kentucky. Kentucky actually opened as a 3.5-point favorite. It is now up to 5. The over-under set at 153.5. And so let's go ahead and dive in. Kentucky, I'll say this, it's getting, what's the old Yogi Berra saying? It's getting late awfully early over here. It's getting dark way too early for Kentucky fans. And I understand Kentucky fans are frustrated. Jalen Lowe gets hurt. You lose to Louisville. I think there's a little, I'm just going to be honest, I think there's a little Calipari derangement syndrome still going on with the Kentucky fan base that feels like they have to overreact to every loss, and every loss is life or death. Like, dude, you went on the road. You lost to a really good team. You rallied late. By the way, everybody's losing on the road, right? Kansas lost at Carolina. Arkansas lost at Michigan State. It's really hard to win games in true road venues. Kentucky had not played an exhibition on the road. And so I just bring it up because to me, it wasn't a huge deal. What did become a big deal, Jalen Lowe, the starting point guard, got hurt after that game. And so he is out tonight. He did not play Friday. I believe the opponent was Eastern Illinois on Friday. And I do think there should be some concern going forward. Now, I do think if you're looking for a positive in this, Denzel Aberdeen, the transfer from Florida, has really stepped up. And that, to me, by the way, like, I don't want to be like, what's the word, sunshine pumper about, it doesn't matter that the projected starting point guard for Kentucky got hurt. No, of course I think it matters. But I think the counter to that is that you brought in Denzel Aberdeen, who very much played point guard at Florida last year, especially when Walter Clayton went down with injury. To his credit, he has been one of the few consistent players for Kentucky, averaging 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, was really good against Louisville, 26 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, kind of kept them in that game. And so as we transition to this evening, I think there's a couple things. You've now had a couple games with him at point guard. This is the guy you have to, you just got to roll with it. Injuries happen. It sucks, but it's the reality. And I think for Kentucky, this game to me comes down to a couple things. One, you got to be able to shoot 3-point ball. 2, you got to be able to rebound. And 3, you got to figure out what the heck's going on with Otega Oweh, okay? Otega Oweh to me is maybe the weirdest story in college basketball right now. I understand that he got hurt in the middle of the summer, turf toe injury, didn't basically practice or play for really about, 2 months at one point. And so I understand it's been a slow start, but in the process of it being a slow start, the body language is bad. He's acting weird. He's looking weird. And I think whatever it is, Mark Pope has to figure that part out. He has scored in double figures every game, but his points per game is way down. His shooting is way down. And his other statistics are way down. He was a better rebounder last year. He was a better passer last year. And so to me, that is the number one key to Kentucky. He was the preseason SEC player of the year. If you can't figure that out, good luck getting things going right this season. And I said it after the Louisville game. Whatever it is, I don't really care. If he's hurt, don't play him. You have enough players. This is why you spent $22 million on your roster, to have depth, to have guys ready to step up. But if he's healthy, then he's got to be better, and you got to get him right. I don't know if it's getting in the gym. I don't know if it's talking to him about his body language, but it is not good. So for me, the X factor for Kentucky is Otega Oweh. And then I think most importantly, they really shot the 3 ball pretty well against Eastern Illinois on Friday night. I understand that Eastern Illinois is what it is. And I understand that even coming into the season, we thought that Kentucky wouldn't be as good of a 3-point shooting team. But it doesn't change the fact that, to their credit, 9 of 25 from 3 in that Eastern Illinois win. As far as Michigan State is concerned, I was thinking about this. Michigan State, this is the most Tom Izzo Michigan State team that Michigan State has ever had, okay? Tom Izzo, Michigan State, how about this? Basically, they're everything that you ever thought they would be. Really good point guard, really good on the glass, terrible 3-point shooting team. If you're looking for a positive on Michigan State, or maybe we start with the negative first, I don't know. The negative is they do not shoot the ball well at all, okay? They're shooting 21% from 3. That is currently 351 out of about 360 Division I teams. Michigan State is there. The positive is, if you're Michigan State, they are 4th in the country in rebound margin. In other words, they get more rebounds relative to their opponent, the margin of rebounds, than all but 3 other teams in college basketball. I believe it was Illinois, Tennessee, and St. Mary's were the only 3 that rebound the ball better. So it's the most quintessential Tom Izzo team ever, but it's also a limited Tom Izzo team. And I think, everyone was quick to make fun of Arkansas when they lost at Michigan State. But remember, Michigan State was plus 12 on the glass against Arkansas. And they still only won by 3 in that game. And so in my opinion, what that says to me is the fact that in this game, we have a situation where I think it favors Kentucky. Because if Michigan State could only beat Arkansas by 3 at home, now you put them on a neutral court. I go ahead and give the advantage to Kentucky. I'll say I do think Michigan State kind of controls tempo, but I'll say final score, 78-67. I just don't know if Michigan State has enough firepower. Now, Kentucky's got to prove they're tough on the glass. Big game for Brandon Garrison. Big game for Malachi Moreno. We'll see what happens from there. Duke, Kansas. Let's just really quick on this one because, I saw this. Duke is a 10.5-point favorite in the Circus Sportsbook. The over-under is 151.5. And I saw Kansas fans asking, when is the last time that a Bill Self-coached team was a double-digit underdog in a game? There were a couple games a few years ago where they might have been, but that was like late in the season, injuries. Remember, Kevin McCullough was their star that year. He got hurt late. But it hasn't happened very often. And to me, that seems to indicate pretty much that Darren Peterson is not going to play. Now, this might be a story coming into tomorrow's show. Maybe we talk about it in more in depth. something weird's going on with Darren Peterson. And Kansas fans are convinced like, oh, he's load managing. He doesn't want to be here. He took the NIL check, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm not ready to go there yet. But the kid played against North Carolina and basically has not played a game since. And so if you're a Kansas fan, you're sitting there saying, like, what the heck is going on with this program? Why is he not playing? And I think the sad part about Kansas is I actually think that the talent around him is better than they get credit for. I actually think, Bill Self all offseason kept saying, like, we like our guys around Darren. And everybody said, I don't know. And it's like, I actually do like him. Trey White's been playing really well. Bryson Tiller, the basketball player, not the singer. I think he's an NBA player. Might not be this year, 2-3 years down the road, but 6'10", he can shoot. He does a lot of things. Melvin Council. But if you don't have Darren Peterson, I don't think any of it matters. Well, Bill Self said after their most recent game on Saturday that Darren Peterson wasn't going to be available for the extended future. And that's obviously really bad news for Kansas because it's not only about this game for Kansas, but they got a couple other big ones coming up. They go to that Players Era tournament that I was mentioning next week in Vegas. They open at Players Era with Notre Dame and Syracuse, so I guess that works out. They have Kansas at home. They also go to NC State in November. And so this thing could go sideways quickly. That's all before Big 12 play. So I just bring it up because from Kansas's perspective, they need to get things right. Duke, I don't know if Duke's quite as good as last year, but they're operating at a pretty high level. Cam Boozer, 22 points, 15 rebounds a game. That was after struggling against Texas. I will say, I do wonder if Texas had a little bit of a blueprint for Cam Boozer, make him catch it far from the basket, body him up. Don't let him get in the paint. Don't let him get downhill. We'll see what happens. To his credit, he's averaging 22 a game. And also on top of it, 5 different Duke players averaging at least 9 points per game. I'll go ahead. Duke's going to win this game if Darren Peterson doesn't play. And I think Duke probably covers if they don't, if Darren Peterson doesn't play. So that is my, I'll say, 84 to 68. Like, I think it's going to be ugly. I would take Duke to win. I would take Duke to cover. I'd certainly monitor, make sure Darren Peterson's not playing before you throw down a bet. But yeah, it's worth monitoring. All right, I'll tell you what. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I kind of want to see what Lane Kiffin has to say on the Pat McAfee show. Couple things. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Also, I'd keep that subscribe button on here on YouTube because if Lane Kiffin makes some broad announcement today, I might come back live here in an hour or in 2 hours or in 5 hours. So make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications. We're going to go. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. CauleyPuffs.com. Promo code Torres gets you 15% off. SeatGeek.com gets you $20 off your first purchase. And oh, by the way, on top of it, thank you to Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino, where I will be spending a lot of time next week. Time for me to go. Appreciate your support. I'll be back soon. Shout out to Torrent Greg. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to Jay.